You've just entered the No Delusion Zone. I'm David Dubato. My very special guest today is Frank Figliuzzi. Frank's been on before, and I'm pleased to have him back again. And I just want to tell my listeners that I am just getting over a very bad cold. So if I sound stranger than normal, that's what's going on here. So please bear with me. Frank is the former assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI. He is currently working as a national security analyst at NBC and MSNBC. And again, I'm really pleased to have him back here. There's so much to talk about and not enough time. So, Frank, welcome back to the No Delusion Zone.
David, I'm glad we could do this. I know everybody's talking about what we're going to talk about, but hopefully I can add some insights and add some value to a really particularly risky time in our history.
I agree. And as I said to you off air, nobody really has any solutions now because nobody knows what's going to happen on 5 November. But based on your position, especially as the director of counterintelligence dealing with national security issues, including domestic terrorism here in the United States, I think your opinion is invaluable. And so I want our listeners to understand that. You're not just some, as I say, schmuck off the street. You are somebody that's dealt with this for your livelihood, and I think your opinion is crucial to this. So we'll get right to it. You were just on recently, and we talked about the same thing. But since you were on, what, in your opinion, has gotten worse? What's happened new, if anything, that's ratcheted up the tension?
So the risk and threat picture is getting sharper into focus, and the focus that we're seeing, the picture that's developing is not good. It's getting worse, not better. So why do I say that? Trump and his minions are doubling down on all of the areas that concern people in the security world and really people who are advocates for a democracy. When we hear him not backing away from the authoritarian approach, not backing away from the idea, the concept of putting active duty military on the ground in our streets. Why? I'm not quite sure, except that it's been tied to dissidents, protesters, people who oppose him, continues to suggest that he'll have the FCC pull the licenses of mainstream media because he doesn't like the way they did an interview or portrayed him. The idea of using the government to actively target people for simply exercising free speech. No one should be surprised when this happens. This will happen if he gets reelected. And I think, well, let me keep talking about the risk and threat picture, and then we'll get into some more esoteric things. So number one, Trump himself is telling us what he plans to do if he wins. Number two, we have a situation where state-sponsored adversaries, and I'll name them and shame them, it's Russia, it's China, it's North Korea, and Iran, are becoming increasingly engaged in trying to meddle with this election, particularly in the area of cyber and social media propaganda. This week alone, as we speak, the U.S. intelligence community has singled out, as one example, a video that 1 million people have viewed already, so the damage is done, where allegedly a former student of Tim Walz, vice presidential candidate, claims that he was molested by Tim Walz. In a rare move, the U.S. intel community has come out and said, hey, this right here, we've attributed to the Russian intelligence services. So this is fake. This isn't going to get lighter between now and election day. This is going to get worse. And when 1 million people have clicked on something or viewed something, you've got a problem. And you know, here we go again. Bob Mueller and his Russia special counsel told us when he indicted 24 Russians, by the way, that, yeah, they're doing it. The Republican-controlled Senate Intelligence Committee back then said in even stronger language, there was collusion between the campaign and Russia. There was interference to support Trump. So it's going to happen again. It is happening again. Now throw in China, Iran, North Korea, all doing their part. And look, what did we find out in the last 24 hours? Elon Musk reportedly is in regular contact with Vladimir Putin. We now have an unholy trinity. It's Putin, it's Trump, it's Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a man, believe it or not, who has a U.S. security clearance. Because why? He's embedded with our Defense Department with regard to Starlink and other projects. Yet, reportedly, he's taken orders from Putin to turn off Starlink over Ukraine. You've got to be kidding me. And so we need an immediate review of Elon Musk's clearance. I know you and I, if we had any foreign contacts, and they had to be reported. I mean, if you have a cousin that you're in regular contact with, certain nations, you've got to report that. Has Elon Musk reported that? I'm sure he has not, but we need an immediate suspension of his clearance and decide why we're so incredibly dependent upon Elon Musk with our national security. So that's the international picture. The third, is let's go to domestic. As we speak, David, known extremist violent militias are planning and training for what they call, quote, what's to come, unquote. Am I saying we're going to see an iconic, huge attack like we saw on January 6th at the Capitol? I don't think so. I think it's going to be soft targets. I think it's going to, the battleground, the policing problem is going to be local, county, and state, particularly in swing states where they're counting the vote. And isn't it disheartening to read media reports that, for example, Maricopa County Sheriff's Department in Arizona, the Phoenix area, is giving out body armor to election officials, is going to be deploying drones, and is putting snipers on rooftops to protect the building where the vote's going to get tabulated. Here we are, United States of America, 2024.
I think we talked about this last time, but I'm going to ask you again because not everybody watches, unfortunately, all of my podcasts. But I think it's worth noting. You mentioned the sheriff in Maricopa County. That's not the first time they did this. I think they did this back in 2020, the same thing. But they're increasing the number of drones. They're increasing their surveillance and the security outside of the polling places. I want to ask you your thoughts on the Constitutional Sheriffs Association and their danger or potential danger to this election.
Great question, because if you overlap where the constitutional sheriffs, and for those who aren't up to speed on what that means, it's sheriffs who believe that they answer to no one but God, that their allegiance, so-called, is to the Constitution. No one can tell them what to do, including enforcing the laws in their state. So some of these guys, mostly guys, who, by the way, they're organized. They have conferences. If you think this is scattered, no. They have conventions. There's enough of them to hold a convention. And they now believe, just to give you a sense of their mindset, in their states, they say we're not enforcing red flag laws. So if we get family members, bosses, employees who say, I'm worried about this guy who's threatening to kill people, and the state allows us to temporarily seize a weapon and figure out the threat, they won't do it. They won't do it. Because why? Because they don't enforce the law, they enforce their own beliefs. And now we learn that these constitutional sheriffs believe they have a role in the election process. Okay. What does that mean? They are training their deputies to look for, quote, voting irregularities. Okay, that's not your role. Just protect the voting process physically and keep election workers safe. Now we think you're going to engage in some kind of vote monitoring. So if you overlap the constitutional sheriffs with a geographic map of swing states, we begin to see a problem. Because if they were in Connecticut, where, Connecticut's going to go blue, probably not a problem. But now put them in a state or county where, oh my God, every vote counts, and they're going to somehow muddle with that. It's a real concern. And will they really protect people who are voting blue? Will they really protect election officials who might be Democrats? Or will they even do worse and muck up the actual vote?
Well, I mean, you're actually right about the swing states. I think the president of this group, this motley group, is from Michigan, a key state. And he has, well, he said a lot of things, but he's talked about, again, seizing voting machines, about providing security at polling places to ensure voting integrity, and so forth and so on, which of course means the exact opposite. In fact, the whole name, constitutional sheriffs, is ironic because they don't follow any constitution.
Right. Aren't we all? It sounds great, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I want my sheriff to be constitutional. I'm constitutional. Yeah, it's a ruse. It's kind of like that group, what is it, Moms for Liberty? Sounds great. Who's against moms and liberty?
Yeah.
Well, they're the ones around the country who are pulling books out of libraries. So, and then let's add into this mess Trump's announcement that, quote, that we have tens of thousands of election monitors we're going to disperse around the country to watch the tabulation of the vote. Wow. Okay. So again, there's something that on its face sounds wonderful. Hey, we can't have enough people monitoring the vote. Well, here's the problem. One of the organizers of those so-called tens of thousands, and by the way, I don't believe that Trump has tens of thousands of election monitors. First of all, they won't be allowed. You can't fit that many people in buildings around the country. But one of the organizers has said, oh, what we stand for is to challenge every single ballot. Can you imagine that? By the way, that's going to happen. You're going to see ridiculous challenges to virtually every ballot in swing states. Imagine what that does to the process. Imagine. And then now imagine a scene where people have had enough in that county, and the officials tell the sheriffs, start dragging these so-called monitors out of the building. We can't. They've stopped the process with ridiculous challenges. Now, oh my God, when are we going to figure out who won? Is it going to be Thanksgiving? When are we going to know?
Well, you say that they don't have enough poll watchers or whatever, and I agree. They don't have 10,000, but Frank, they don't have to. It's just like saying, well, he doesn't have enough to start a real civil war. You don't have to. A few thousand well-armed people could start a civil war. And with the poll watchers, you don't have to have 10,000. If he has a few in the key states that are going to disrupt the process and maybe even become violent and maybe even try to seize the polling machines or seize the ballots and combine with the constitutional sheriffs, who then might allow them to do that. In fact, may provide security for them while they do that. Maybe even have the Proud Boys show up to provide additional security. And you're right. They've had 4 years now to practice this, to put this into play. And they've got armies of lawyers, as you mentioned, that are going to sue and contest every single vote, especially in the key states. What's your thoughts about that? You just alluded to it briefly. If we don't know the results of the election on election night, the next week, the next month, while these lawsuits are going on, and possibly even confrontations at local and state level polling places.
So, as you know, the lens that I view the world through is security. It's not about the politics for me. It's actually much bigger than politics for me, and I know it is for you as well. So, what does that mean? The longer and wider the gap in time between election day and getting all the challenges worked out and resolving who won, which, by the way, we still haven't, Donald Trump and his believers haven't still resolved who won the last presidential election. So that gap will be filled, I assure you. And it will be filled with people who have ill intentions. So timing is everything. You cannot hold you cannot hold the ground security-wise for inordinate amounts of time. The dam will give way. And so I get concerned about that. We've just spent the last several minutes talking about the election process and voting and the security risk around that. And now we've transitioned to the day after, the night of the day after. And I can tell you right now, Donald Trump will prematurely claim that he won. and we'll set that expectation. And that if it comes out differently, his blind followers will say, well, he told us he won. How could he have not have won? You know, the polls, he's already said things like, see, I'm ahead in the polls. That means they cheat if they win. He's already planted that seed. We know where this is going. So prematurely claiming victory. Then he'll be angry, shocked, and so he'll feign, surprise if that doesn't happen. And by the way, I don't know what the outcome of the election will be, but if it comes out that he lost, he will incite people to violence. And does that mean he's going to stand there and say, I want you to start shooting judges and lawyers? No. But we have a track record of what he's capable of doing, and he damn well knows what he's capable of doing. In terms
he's not going to do that. He's a mafia don. Mafia dons never pull the trigger. They have other people pull the trigger and have deniability, and so that's what he's good at. Let me ask you this. Again, you were formerly the assistant director of the FBI for counterintelligence. Put your CI director hat back on. You're in charge still. You're at the FBI, and in 9 or 10 days, you got the election coming up. What would you do, or how would you coordinate the national security, even at the state level, especially at the state level, if you were still at the FBI? What should be going on right now behind the scenes?
So there clearly is a task force that's been created, and it's multidisciplinary. What do I mean by that? So I was the head of counterintel. That's largely foreign intelligence services that we're going after, right? You bring in then the international terrorism and domestic terrorism folks from the counterterror division. Okay, then you look at the criminal division and bring them in for election-related crimes and offenses, threats against election officials. So, let's not forget, my colleagues that head up the cyber division are at the table, because they're seeing this at the 30,000-foot level. And now let's team up. This is see. So here comes DHS and CISA, cybersecurity folks who did. By the way, someday we should get a movie about 2020 election, 2016 election, and the behind the scenes classified battle that went on at NSA, at CISA, to secure the election from foreign cyber attack. They are heroes, and I hope someday we get that whole story, because the battle was fierce in the cyber world. So all of those people are already at the table, and DHS particularly is essential, not only because CISA sits within DHS, but also because of the liaison that DHS is responsible for with state, county, local police. This is crucial. So the training is going on. What's your intelligence? Sharing the intelligence. What groups do you have who could show up and mess up things from a domestic terror capability? Where are your informants? Have you developed the proper informant base? All of that is going on. What worries me on the cyber world, state sponsors particularly, but it could, as Trump famously said, could be some fat guy in his basement, but the level of sophistication of the nations we've named is quite capable of turning out the lights in a key voting precinct on election day, or messing with the 911 system, or shutting off the traffic lights, or putting out a artificial intelligence video and news report that says your voting precinct is on fire. Whatever. There's going to be a mass shooting at the following election places. And a vote that depends on just a couple thousand votes, now you've messed with the election. And that keeps everybody up at night.
Well, you mentioned the Russians, and I'm going to focus in on them because I'm sorry. They're the bad guys right now. They, as you know, I'm sure, also were behind many, if not most, of the lies behind what FEMA was not doing to provide for hurricane victims. A lot of that was put out by Russian intelligence, and it was taken hook, line, and sinker, and a lot of it was put out by Fox News and some other of the Kremlin apparatchiks here, and to the point where, as you know, FEMA was they had to call back some of their people because they were going to be confronted by locals with guns who believed that FEMA was actually, instead of helping people, was burying them under the rubble in their homes. These were the Russians. And so, yeah, I mean, I could see them, Frank, actually providing a video of a polling place in a key state, which shows the local polling officials stealing ballots or stuffing them into a box, and even having on there a Democrat or Democratic Party and taking it out the back door or whatever, like you said, to just inflame people to the point where they want to storm the state house or the local polling precincts.
Yeah, and in this day and age, once they press send on that and it hits social media, like I said, with the fake news about Tim Walz, a million people have seen it, a million and or more, and it's seared into their brain, and they'll believe it. The Trump folks have proven over and over again they'll believe whatever he's feeding them. No challenge, no look it up yourself. Whatever he says, echoed by Fox News and others. And now the U.S. government will come out and go, hey, no, that didn't happen. That's fake. It's viral. It's AI. And you know what? We've reached a sad place in our society when, I don't know, 30, 40% of Americans will go, that comes from the government? We don't believe the government anymore. We can't. Who said that? DHS, Mayorkas, FBI that's investigating my guy Trump? How should I believe that that's not real? And now we're in for a year of wrestling over whether it was viral or not, people not caring. And one of the saddest parts of this, there's two sad parts that I've really noticed. And one, of course, we already know, is that the Republicans, elected officials, Congress, House and Senate, we've got nobody left who will come out and say, hey, guys, it's fake. It's nonsense. We can't coalesce around a foreign adversary. We can't agree on whether it's an adversary or not. People saying, what's wrong with Elon Musk talking regularly to Russian head of state? Well, there's nothing wrong with businessmen getting on the phone and in foreign markets. Fantastic. That's capitalism. The guy has a U.S. security clearance and he's taken orders from Putin. That's the problem.
Well, the saddest part to me, to be honest with you, Frank, is that a lot of American people, the MAGA crowd especially, has been told that a lot of this originates in Russia at the Kremlin, and they say that, well, we don't care. We actually believe Putin more than we believe Biden. That to me is far more scary, and that's the point that we're at right now. And I don't know.
And where did that notion come from? Helsinki, Finland, Trump. The press conference, where Trump goes, I don't know why Putin would do this. My intelligence agencies tell me he did it, but I don't know why.
I believe Russian intelligence more than my own intelligence.
Yeah, that gave everybody license to say, yeah, what's wrong with, as Tucker said, what's so wrong with Putin? What's the problem? They don't get it. They don't want to get it. The second thing I said, there's two things that really are sad. The second thing is that, if you categorize Trump's followers, you've got a group who goes, yeah, look, I know he's a bad dude. I got it. I'm disgusted by what he says and does, but I believe that we need, we need somebody other than Kamala Harris. I'm a staunch conservative. Okay. Okay. You're slightly messed up on this because the guy's a bad dude. Yeah. And you're willing to look the other way on 100 problems. But there's another category increasing in size that says, oh, I'm fully aware of the fact that he praises Hitler, wants the generals who were loyal to Hitler. I'm fully aware we're looking at active duty military boots on the ground in our cities. I realize a million or two brown people are going to get scooped up, separated from their families. People who have been here for years, dragged away from their kids who can't even speak Spanish now. And mistakes are going to be made. They're going to grab, it's like the Japanese internment camps. We're going to grab American citizens. Yeah, I get it. And you know what? And I get the generals have now identified him as a fascist. And yeah, I get that it kind of qualifies. If you look at the definition of fascism, yeah, I get it. And you know what? I want it. Give me more of that. David, I'm hearing that more and more. Like, yeah, what's the problem? We need a strict authoritarian. The United States is going to hell in a handbasket, And yeah, it's time to come in and kick ass. And what's wrong with the military scooping up people and being on the streets? That is the scariest part of all. Hitler, Mussolini were elected. They were welcomed. And here we are. Here we are.
No, I agree, and I agree, and in my own way, I'm trying to put that out as well. That is the scariest thought. The fact that they know it, you can't embarrass them anymore. You can't scare them and say, "Do you realize that all of the lies that you're believing are lies coming from the Kremlin?" Because they may say, "Okay, well, so what? That's okay. I trust the Kremlin and Putin and the KGB or the FSB and GRU more than I do the FBI, more than I do the CIA or my own government. So what's the problem?" And the great article in, I think it was The Atlantic recently, about somebody who went to all these Trump rallies over the last several months, and almost all the people said, "Yes, he'll be a dictator on day one, and I want a dictator. That's what we need here." So it just echoes what you said.
We've lost the concept of history. Apparently, we're not teaching history. I don't know what's going on in the schools. I don't know. But clearly, here we are embracing and welcoming what could be a fascist.
Well, we stopped teaching civics many, many years ago. As you know, the Republicans are an anti-education and anti-science party. That's been going on for a long time now, way before Trump. I know you've got to go pretty soon. I want to wrap up with a couple of things. First of all, I talked about a little bit just now about the Trump rallies. What are your thoughts about two things? One, if, God forbid, Trump is elected, him actually enacting or using the Insurrection Act, and couple that with Mike Flynn, retired Lieutenant General Mike Flynn, who actually advocated for that. And from everything I read, he may be in charge of implementing it. If Trump is elected, he could even be the head of Homeland Security or the FBI or God knows what else.
Or Secretary of Defense.
Secretary of Defense, some other meaningless job in the Trump administration. What do you think about Trump enacting the Insurrection Act, the repercussions, national security, of course, and possibly lunatic Mike Flynn in charge?
Yeah, he's already said it. He's it didn't get enough coverage, but Trump already has talked about invoking the Insurrection Act. I think within the last couple of weeks, he's done it. Maybe this, I saw it, I heard it, came out of his mouth. What would be the circumstances? It wouldn't take much. I think you're going to see, if you got protests, now he's going to take, if he wins, what is it, January 20th, he'll take office. Mm-hmm. If there's enough protests around that inauguration, whether it's DC or throughout the United States, and I think there will be, that will be enough. He'll need one person breaking a window or assaulting an officer, and you'll see him invoke the Insurrection Act.
And if he does that, what's, in your opinion, what are the repercussions from national security standpoint? What's going to happen inside this country after the Insurrection Act is enacted on January 20th or 21st?
So this will give him unchecked power. So everything else involves checks and balances. It's for example, if you wanted to federalize the National Guard without the Insurrection Act being invoked, he'd need to coordinate and get concurrence from governors. The Insurrection Act allows him to not consult with a goddarn person, not Congress. You're supposed to consult with Congress for military to go to war. But if he wants to go to war against the American people on the streets, he doesn't have to consult with anybody.
The enemy within.
Yeah, what he calls the enemy within. So what would that look like? I think he'd start with federalizing the National Guard. And then if protests by the way, that's going to instigate further protests. There's nothing like seeing troops in uniform at your coffee shop with automatic weapons, suppressing free speech and freedom of assembly to make all of us want to protest and march.
Kent State, they gunned down 4 students. It almost destroyed the country back then.
Exactly.
1970.
Thank you for bringing up Kent State. One bad day for a National Guard troop where a weapon is fired, even an accidental discharge, and all hell breaks loose. And now here comes active duty military. And if you got a guy like Mike Flynn as Secretary of Defense, or Kash Patel over at DHS, or whoever, and who knows, Attorney General, God help us, then you've got carte blanche. Go at it. But I'll remind you, he doesn't need any of those cabinet secretaries because he's invoked the Insurrection Act. So this is all a domino effect that escalates out of control very, very quickly.
What, and I know you got to go. Last question. Trump loses. What do you see in terms of far right-wing MAGA violence? How do you see it unfold?
Yeah, so this is the big stress test. You know, I use this phrase because, you know, stress test comes out of the banking world, where government regulators will, you know, for banks that are too big to fail, they will have this exercise where they have this variable and that variable, and, you know, how many people are withdrawing money and blah, blah, blah. And they determine whether a bank can stand. And this will be our stress test. If it's declared that Trump loses, and it's all about him, whether he gives out the proper signals to, hey, it's time to go to action. He's got the proven track record to do it. We saw that on January 6th. I believe he'll do it again. The question, you know, when I say this is a test, it's a test of him and whether he continues to have this hold on people. Can he turn out the numbers and the violence in sufficient scope to really do damage?
Does he have the people, armed people, militias at the local level to do this, in your opinion?
So the answer is yes. As I told you, researchers far greater than me see it happening on Telegram and in private chat rooms. It's happening. The training, the recruitment, and it's not a bunch of fat guys who go out on the weekend and drink beer and shoot beer cans in the woods. These are known violent extremists, many of whom have already been arrested for January 6th, many of whom have been kicked off Facebook in the last after January 6th. They're back. By the way, Facebook's not doing enough on this because I think they're gun shy. They're like, oh, we don't want to mess anything up now. And so they're migrating to Telegram. So the numbers are there. The violent people are there. The question that still remains in my mind, and we better be prepared either way, is whether the over 1,000 convictions now for January 6th, convictions, whether that's sufficient to have a chilling effect on how they act out, and how many will say, hey, I'm not going to prison for this. I don't know the answer to that, but the law enforcement community better be ready for it.
Are they?
Well, we just finished talking about constitutional sheriffs, and this comes down to the local, county, and state level, and whether they're ready for it. I like to think they are. I like to think DHS and FBI are giving the proper heads up, intel sharing, and training. But I don't know. I don't either, Frank. And I know we have to leave it there. I pray that they do, which I know you do as well. And I'm not going to say they're not, because I don't know. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, of course. They know far more than I do about that. But I hope they're ready. I happen to think cyber-wise, we're behind the curve right now as much as we do. Good. With this specific issue, I don't know. I just don't know. With all the chatter out there and the organizing that's been going on for the last 4 years, I really pray that we're ready. Frank, I know you've got to run. Frank Figliuzzi, former assistant director of the FBI for Counterintelligence. Thank you for coming on again. And I want to talk to you after the election for an assessment and a damage control, perhaps. Yeah. Hey, stay safe out there. Thank you.
You too. You stay safe as well. Take care.